Uh, welcome, Harold. This is
Thanks for having.
I'm delighted to have Harold Nelson, the author of The Design Way. We're doing this series on CJ Fearnley's project of collaborating for comprehensivism. And I have to tell you a story first, uh, of first how I heard about Harold's book. I'd heard of his book before, but I want to tell you how it really caught my attention. I was interviewing CJ at his home. I think I was one of the first visitors he had after COVID. And I was interviewing him about his upcoming book. And during the interview, he held up this book, orange book, 4 times. So I said, why are you exactly? Exactly. So I said, why? How come you're holding up this book 4 times? Now I had known about this book, but you know, somebody holding it 4 times. That was. I said, okay, I have to find out what this is. So I started reading it and listening to it, and I just inhaled it in 4 days, believe it or not. And then started doing meetups on it. But before that, CJ had done 20 meetups before I ever met CJ. He had done 20 meetups on this book, The Design Way by Harold Nelson, with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. These were in-person meetups. After I met him, he did 12 meetups on various concepts within this book. And then, inspired by CJ, we did a whole series on going through the design way chapter by chapter. It took us a long time, and Harold Nelson was there watching everything during the Zoom. So clearly, this is a book that CJ thinks is at the heart of what he wants to accomplish in this world. Collaborating for comprehensivity. The aspect that this book really does an amazing job of is how do you apply this approach to designing of the way. So I am just delighted that uh, that Harold agreed to this interview on like a couple an hour's notice. So thank you very much. So Harold, what do you think about the CJ's entire project of collaborating for comprehensivism and his focus on your book as a centerpiece?
Of course, I love the focus on the book. I just love that. That was such a gift to us from CJ to actually bring it to the fore in that way and to have it presented to so many people. He was a blessing for that. And he's really somebody that sort of helped form the crucible for a culture of design. He's a champion, a participant. He's a part of the material that holds the conversation. So yeah, he was wonderful, and he was certainly on my list of people I wanted to participate in the new school that I've been working on with some people on design, systemic design. His ideas, of course, will be embedded in it. So that's great. And I have to say, I mean, for me, it's not just what you bring, but who you bring. And CJ brought himself, and that was a great gift. I mean, holy cow, what a dedicated person, what character, what scholarship. It was impressive. And I just looked at my computer desktop, and out of all these multitudes of files, there's 3 of them that are labeled for a particular person, and CJ's one of them. And his material, his articles and videos were such gifts to me. I mean, they were just treasures. So I've been collecting these treasures. And of course, it's not just something you read once or hear once. You have to think about it, because he does this incredible job of connecting things, linking things. He talks about breadth and depth, which is the kind of ongoing specialist generalist argument nowadays, which is the most important. But he talks about both at the same time. But interestingly, and I never got to talk to him about this. I wanted to, but he's a polymath. The polymath is the one that connects and links all these things and weaves them. And what I got from him were these great compositions of ideas, like works of art. Here is how you weave together things into a kind of a comprehensive whole idea. And it's was wonderful. And the aesthetics and everything about it is so appreciative, especially nowadays when people just want to sort of debate about things and whose truth is going to prevail. And he was actually presenting us these wonderful compositions. And isn't this a beautiful thing? Yes, more please. I love it.
Well, thank you, Harold. Let's focus on the concept of comprehensivity, because it is the reason why he focused on your book, that you really bring comprehensivity to design in your book. So can you talk a little bit about design and comprehensivity?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think for me that design does, and it's in the tradition of his comprehensivity, but maybe more designerly in some cases, is like approaching it from a systems perspective. A whole system is something that's sufficient. It has sufficiency there. It has all the things that it needs to be viable, so that an elephant is a sufficient whole living thing. It has environment, it has the rest of it, but it's sufficient, and it has this integrity about being this great majestic animal and things. So in design, what we strive to do is create things that have integrity and this wholeness and this completeness in itself. So it's not that it includes everything all the time, but it includes what's necessary and sufficient to create these things of a great integrity and cohesion and unity and all of that. And the important thing about it in design is that there are emergent qualities that come from that, so that the idea of the elephant emerges from all these pieces and parts. The old story about the blind men touching different parts of the elephant. This story never talks about the person who can tell you, well, that's an elephant altogether. All they're saying is, here are all the pieces and parts, and these guys miss what it really is. Well, who knows what it really is? Well, a comprehensivist designer knows what it is. It's an elephant, and it has all these things together. Take anything apart, it's not an elephant anymore. So that's what I really think connects for me, is this idea of how you bring things, connect, link, join things together so that you have a viable whole. You can have emergent qualities. You have life can emerge from all of this. So it's not very well respected nowadays. I think we're in a very analytic society, reductive society, not to say simplistic, and the limits of characters and tweets and all that stuff. Everybody's kind of dropped down, and he is championing synthesis. That's what essentially it is. It's not, you're just not making aggregations of stuff. You're not just pulling in all the stuff, piles of it. You're making things.
Yes, and talking of that, I think architects at their best are very good in designing for elephants which are in the room, and people who do not, for those elephants which people don't even know are in the room. And
Yeah,
that can be seen by the architects that we have looked at, whether it is Louis Sullivan, Buckminster Fuller, Russell Eckhoff. I mean, all of them have that same characteristic, because they're designing for the whole. So when CJ was saying, okay, what should we do now? How do I how do we carry on the great work that he has started? We decided, not we decided, CJ said, okay, this is the way to do it. And his idea was to center it on Buckminster Fuller and comprehensivity. So we have this entire series coming up with comprehensivity of Buckminster Fuller. Bucky inspired comprehensivity to understand and change the world. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, of Buckminster Fuller, because what we are planning to do is that we're going to spend, this is going to be every week, all of next year. And what we did is that CJ is brilliant. He came up with these 4 on-ramps to synergetics. He says, you have,
yeah,
you, yeah,
brilliant.
What he's saying is that, there are these 4 tracks because people are different and different people can be approached in different way. So you have to provide all these 4 tracks. There is the design track. There is the, integrity or kind of wholeness track, which has a very different tradition of, kind of religious, holistic kind of way of thinking. Design track is mostly kind of architects, engineers. Then there are tracks in the middle, which are focused on kind of collaboration, a lot of interactivity between people. So, the love between people of, camaraderie, community between people. And the last one is specific ideas like geometry, like most abstract ideas, mastering them and bringing. So we have the entire plan that we have planned next year is 1 week of each. So we'll be proceeding on all 4 tracks throughout the year. But the centerpiece of that is Bucky. So can you talk a little bit about Buckminster Fuller and comprehensivity?
Yeah, I'm still recovering from one of his presentations. I was the student president of the architects students, and so I got to introduce him. I couldn't leave the auditorium after the 15th hour. I had to stay through the however long, but he knows a lot. He knew a lot, and I would say, like, just a little bit different. What was important about Bucky and CJ and Russ and all of the rest of them, the ideas, but they are representative of a way of thinking. So I'm interested in, how is it that Bucky thought? How is it that he came up with these ideas? Because we need more of those. So taking this into the future, I think we should look at education. How do we educate the next ones? How do we create the new polymath designers that think in this way? That's the way CJ does. I mean, that's CJ's ideas are great, but CJ is great. So how does he think about these? There's an old saying that's been around forever. Architecture education is the greatest education model ever. It's just wasted on architects. So I would say it's that piece. It's like the ideas are great. Comprehensive is central. The whole idea of synthesis, of wholeness, is central to us going forward successfully. But how do we get people to think in that way? How do we get people so that the next generations of CJs and others will come through with their way of making sense and wholeness and composition? And so for me, I mean, Bucky was a polymath. He wasn't a specialist or a generalist. And he demonstrated what a person like that would do, how they would think, what they would produce. It's not just about geodesic domes or something, but his thinking allowed those ideas, those different thoughts, to connect, to link, to bond, and an emergent quality. Like the dome is an emergent dome. It's not individual pieces and parts that bend and twist, and it's got to be together. That's why I call it tensegrity, the integral. It's got to be integral to have its wholeness and its character. So it's exemplary of a way of thinking and being in the world, and that's what needs to go forward. And that's, I mean, CJ and others, yourself included, by educating and bringing this, not just the ideas, but this is a way of being in the world. This is a way of thinking. This is a way of being a scholar practitioner. And that, I think, is essential. And being a polymath. Schools don't do that.
I have 2 points
Yeah.
based on what you said. The one thing, I was thinking about, approaches to Bucky. And what I realized is Bucky giving that 15-hour lectures, and you were not the only one who got 15-hour lectures, by the way. A whole bunch of people, almost every Bucky person that I've met has been in a lecture like that. But look at what it means, that he thinks that communicating with people back and forth, speaking out, hearing what they're saying, speaking up, that is important. Most people think of it as you just go learn what you need to do in a school. This conversation, commitment to communication is something that comes, is very apparent when you look at his life, with the volume of his books and the enthusiasm with which he spoke relentlessly, hour after hour after hour after hour, in city after city after city after city. Okay, so that's one point. So that importance of communication. The second thing is I want to get your take on the meetups that we did on your book, because that, I think, is a kind of example of what CJ is trying to do and what I'm trying to do. That you take a book like The Design Way. By the way, when I first said I was going to do meetups on this, CJ's first reaction, oh, you need to plan 200 meetups. I said, no, 200, because I'm very focused on the audience, and I want to make sure that whatever is being said is taken in by the audience fully in a way which is manageable for them. And he says, oh, you're going to do it in these many meetups? I don't think it's possible. But and then, of course, after every meetup, he was very, very pleased with with the result. But the point I'm making is that there are books like CJ's, Bucky's books are a great example. They are at this level. They require a lot of work to grasp, and a lot of back and forth to grasp, a lot of practice in order to grasp. And then there is a general audience. And absolutely, that all these great ways of thinking are universal ways of thinking. They are applicable, they are wasted on just the architects. And most architects don't appreciate that either. So they have to come to the masses. So one of the things that we were trying to do in those meetups, those series of meetups on your book, and you were, it was delightful to have you there. But we are trying to take the books and all the concepts of the books and have a diverse group of people with diverse backgrounds engage with it in their own way. What do you think that experiment was like?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, of course, ego aside, but ego involved, I loved it. To see people paying attention to something that you had said, that was amazing. And the difference between when Eric and I were talking about ideas and working through it, and to see what other people would get from that was new to me. I mean, and it was pleasing. It was very respectful. People were honestly, fully engaged in the idea and the ideas. And it was like when CJ did the piece on measurement, and he would go into nuances and what are the consequences of this, and how do you, it was marvelous. It was like hearing the music played from a score that you had put together, but in this full orchestra. It was like, wow. And that's the talks. It's like the whole orchestra, all these people contributing and being a part of it. And it was, yeah, for me. And it's the way, I mean, having conversations and dialogues and communicating, like you said, the back and forth and the turning together around ideas. is so different and moves things forward. Like we're having these conversations and we're going through, and suddenly, it means that. And if it means that, how about this? Oh, yeah. So you're building, you're not tearing things down, you're not stripping things away down to one idea or my idea or whatever. So that's a great example, I think, of how to move things forward, how to move these ideas forward, and to work from a general sort of script laid down, a seed idea, and seeds grow into all kinds of things. So it's like the book was a seed. I saw that as a seed. It wasn't the final oak tree or whatever. It was just a seed, and there it was, and people were growing it in the way they wanted to and following branches, and a tree was emerging, like elephant. It was a tree that was emerging, that was complete and had this integrity. So yeah, it was great. I'm forever indebted to CJ for that.
I
And
remember the first time I asked you what your reaction was when you were watching all of us engage with your ideas. You said it was like watching my grandchildren play. The ideas I've been working on for all this time, and I've given it to these people, and I'm watching them play with it and grow, play and grow.
yeah.
So wonderful. I want to say one more thing here. You know, whatever you're doing with the new school and whatever we are doing here, we are in the same direction.
Yeah.
Doing exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
because this requirement of taking whatever you have thought of and making it a part of culture, that transition is a long transition.
Yeah.
For Bucky, it is still happening. And I don't think it is particularly good yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes a long time for these ideas to percolate. There is a lot of inertia in the culture. So anything we can do together, you're always welcome. Recently, somebody was starting a university called Trivium University. So they did their introductory lectures here, so they could use it as part of their marketing for their classes. So I'm happy to work with you in whatever way possible, because
Great.
the thing is, your vision is the same vision as CJ's, of saying, human beings should be comprehensivist, and you have to think about things in a comprehensive way. That is good for you as an individual. It is good for the immediate group that you are dealing with, whether your office or your family, and it is good for the world. So it is good all along. So we have always an open door, always delighted to
Thank
be
you.
cooperating with you in any way. So that's all I had. Do you have anything else you would like to say?
Well, I'm really sad that CJ, this has happened to him. It's like, why do bad things happen to good people? Even the Stoics said, why? Everybody's asked that question. Yeah, why? So it's important, I think, for CJ and everyone to really invest energies and time in something that counts, like these ideas going forward. I mean, in a way, CJ and others, they're steering evolution. We're not predestined to get someplace, but we have to be intentional about a place we want to go. And this is like full of steersmen. This is people laying down a course, saying we want to go this way. We're going to navigate. How do we avoid things? So I think that's going to be really a part of his tradition, not only the gift of him in the world and his ideas, but the kind of course he set us on and set so many people on. That's important. And I mean, in a big sense, we live with paradigms that we don't even see, big paradigms. I mean, people misuse the idea of paradigm. If they change their socks, it's a paradigm shift. That's not paradigm shift. But our paradigms that we're immersed in, we're not even aware, but it tells us what to value, what has meaning, and that it's I think it was called by Dreyfus and others, it was background. It's the background that's always there. So what it's more than just changing society, I think. It's actually adjusting a foundational, fundamental paradigm. So, and it's not just a paradigm shift. We're not just shifting from traditional science or something, humanities. It's a fundamental shift in the paradigm. It's a big deal. And people like CJ are exemplary of what people are like when they're in that paradigm. And even if we can't explain it all right now and point it out, yeah, that's somebody that would be present if there was that paradigm, in place. Okay. So that's the way those new paradigms get brought in, I think, anyway, is it bootstraps, because we can point to, well, that's what's going to happen if this new paradigm gets traction. Okay. So you don't have to explain it in detail. You can just say, this is an example, exemplary of, and that's what CJ is an example of a new paradigm, significant paradigm, fundamental paradigm that is beginning to emerge. It's nascent. It's coming in, and we're all responsible for sort of pulling it into place now, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Harold. Really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And give my regards to CJ, that I really missed not having been able to see him in person and not just with the screen between us. I was really looking forward to seeing the person, but
Yes,
we'll carry on.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Harold.
Thank you. Thank you.